Good morning. Hey, Dargan.
And good morning and welcome to all of our webinar attendees. Thank you for joining us today on the Senior Network. I am your host, Dargan Davis with Senior Resources, and I'm joined with my co-host, Holly Van Horn from Lori Life and Health. And I know Holly and I were both really excited about today's speaker. We have Dr. Casey Powers, and he is with Ascent Total Performance, and he is going to be providing exercise tips that people of all ages can benefit from.
Great, fun. We're going to give our guests a couple more minutes to get logged on, and then we'll start the program in just a few minutes. If you don't mind or want to just let us know, drop your city in our chat box, and we would love to hear where you are from. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the Senior Network. Thank you for joining us today. If you missed our previous webinars, we have a virtual library available on our website at seniorresourcesinc.org, and we have a wide variety of topics that you can explore. We have the ABCs of Medicare and estate planning. So if you've missed any of our previous webinars, we encourage you to go to our virtual library on Senior Resources website and check that out. Today's episode is being recorded and will also be available later today on our website and on our social media channels. Before we begin today's presentation with Dr. Casey Powers, I'd like to take a minute just to introduce you to Senior Resources and share about the services and programs that we offer. Senior Resources is a nonprofit organization that coordinates services and provides resources to senior citizens that are living right here in Richland County, helping them to live healthy and independent lives. All of our activities, services, and programs are all that we offer at Senior Resources are all geared towards helping seniors remain independent and in their homes as long as possible. In Richland County, we are the only provider of Meals on Wheels, and we currently serve 600 meals daily through this program to homebound seniors. In addition, we offer home care and transportation services. We have our foster, grandparent, and senior companion programs through AmeriCorps Seniors. And we have a Pet Pals program that serves 49 of our senior clients where we provide pet food to their furry friends. We also have 4 community wellness centers, and that's where seniors are able to gather and have fellowship together and a meal and some physical fitness. And then we also have the Senior Network. That's just another one of our programs that we offer here at Senior Resources that's designed to connect seniors to even more community resources. Holly, tell us a little about Lori Life and Health.
Good morning, and thank you, Dargan. I'm Holly Van Horn. I'm the Community Relations Coordinator at Lori Life and Health, and it's great to be back with you for today's webinar. I hope you've been enjoying this wonderful series as much as Dargan and I have had planning and hosting it. We're proud to partner with Senior Resources to offer these fantastic and informative speakers to you once a month. And I'd love to take a minute to tell you a little bit about Lori Life and Health before we introduce our speaker. We are an independent insurance agency, and we're located right here in Columbia, specializing in Medicare, health, and life insurance. And our mission is to educate you on all the options available and help you make the right decision that meets your needs and your budget. Our services are free, and we can help you over the phone or in person. And you can find more information on our website at www.lorilifeandhealth.com. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you our guest speaker today. Dr. Casey Powers is a doctor of physical therapy at an outpatient orthopedic clinic in Columbia called Ascent Total Performance. Prior to working there, he earned degrees in exercise science and physical therapy from the University of South Carolina. Go Gamecocks. Casey works with a wide range of people of different ages and functional abilities, focusing primarily on musculoskeletal and neuromuscular issues. As a physical therapist, he helps people work through these problems to get back to living their lives comfortably and doing the things they enjoy. And so we are so happy to have him on as our guest speaker today. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I guess, do we have the presentation pulled up already, or can everybody kind of see those slides, or is everybody following along kind of on their own right now?
I'm going to share the screen.
Cool. Sweet. All right. Can you guys see and hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you great.
Yeah, really excited to talk with you guys a little bit about exercise and kind of training these fundamental movements in order to, kind of like you guys were talking about senior resources, kind of maintaining independence, keeping everybody as independent as possible and healthy as possible. These exercises are, a big piece of that here. So we'll kind of get right into things. We'll go ahead to the next slide here. So the fundamental movements we're going to talk about are the upper body push, the upper body pull, the squat, the hinge, and the carry. Just a little bit of a disclaimer. So we're gonna talk about this stuff, and I'm going to provide a lot of examples. This isn't necessarily exercise prescription. There's a million different ways to kind of go about training these movements. But the big kind of take home point I want to get across here is, there's a lot of ways that you can train these movements for different types of folks based on different activity levels, whether you have different pain in different joints or different surgical histories, that kind of thing. And kind of relating those movements and those exercises back to the sort of everyday, more functional daily life forms of these movements to kind of keep you moving better and managing yourself better and all that kind of stuff. So we'll go to the next slide here, and we'll talk a little bit about upper body pushing. So an upper body push is basically any sort of movement where you're pushing something away from your body or pushing your body away from kind of a stationary object. So I've got some functional examples listed here, and then a few pictures. So that first picture on the left, you can see I'm kind of pushing, I'm lying on my side and pushing myself up into a seated position. Next, I've got a few pictures on the bottom here, just putting something up on a high shelf, pushing a grocery cart, and that's going to work the legs too. So it might not be exclusively an upper body push, but still a push. And then scooting sideways along a table here in that bottom right picture. And so the push associated with that kind of thing is more pushing up enough to clear your hips up off of that surface to allow yourself to slide over. I've got some more listed there: pushing a lawnmower, shooting a basketball, more of a fun one. But and these are just a few examples that I kind of could come up with as I was going through this. I'm sure you guys are thinking of examples kind of popping into your heads right now. But the point is, there's a lot of different daily examples of where you're using that upper body push movement. So on the next slide here, we'll get into a little bit of some exercises that can be used to improve your ability to perform those types of movements. On the left, we've got a picture of an overhead press. That one translates really well to sort of the, putting something up in a cabinet, that kind of stuff, working overhead. Next, we've got a plank here. I really like that one. Starting off with that one for most folks, especially if they're not super familiar with this movement or haven't done this in a while, because you're not moving in that position, you're just holding that position, but you're still training all those same muscles that are going to perform that upper body push, and can be a good place to start as you're working into more of the tougher variations of that push. And you can start off kind of like I did on the right here, where you've got your hands up on an elevated surface, whether that's a countertop or a table or something like that. Then as this gets easier, as you get stronger, you can kind of lower yourself down towards the ground, so you're working against gravity a little bit more to where you're on the floor, like it's pictured on the left. And then the next slide here, we'll get into a couple more exercises. So we got the push-up. So actually, pressing yourself away from a surface there. And again, this is one where I'll start off up tall with a lot of folks if they're kind of new to this, and gradually work towards the ground. To the right, I've got that landmine press pictured. That one's a pretty tough one for most folks to do at home because you kind of need a lot of equipment that you probably don't have, might be available in a gym or a PT clinic or something like that. But I really like this one for a lot of folks, especially after maybe if they've got shoulder pain or they just had a rotator cuff repair, that kind of thing. Sometimes coming all the way up overhead can be pretty uncomfortable or tough or painful. So we can kind of come down to where we're still working overhead, but we're not going into any sort of painful range there, and still, work on building up the strength, coordination, and all that kind of stuff associated with, performing some of those overhead tasks. And we'll go to the next slide here. I think we're getting into the upper body pulls. So this is kind of the opposite of an upper body push. Rather than pushing something away from you, now you're pulling something towards you. So I got a few examples listed here: pulling a trash bin, cranking a lawnmower, that kind of motion, raking leaves, sort of pulling that rake out away from you to in towards you, lifting an object from the ground to your chest. And I tried to depict that with this picture in the bottom right corner here. So what I've kind of done there is I picked up that laundry basket, getting ready to, say there's dirty laundry in there. I'm getting ready to take it over to the laundry room. And then I've sort of curled it up to the chest to create enough room so that, I can walk over there without hitting my shins on that laundry basket with every step. And these exercises are also really beneficial for posture. So especially nowadays with cell phones and everything, and we all kind of tend to fall into this sort of rounded shoulder, forward head posture. These exercises can be a good way to train the upper back and the neck and shoulders and kind of come into a better posture here, and approach or address some of the aches and pains associated with sort of that bad posture. And then we'll get into some exercise examples here. So ways to improve your ability to perform those types of movements. The row is one of my favorites. I've got 3 different row variations listed here on this slide. That top picture is a little tough to see, but I'm basically just pulling a band towards the chest. That middle example is one of my favorites to do at home or to kind of introduce people to this, getting them started. Because you can do this basically, at a couch or a chair, something like that, sort of, have an object with some resistance that you're going to pull in one hand and sort of steady yourself with that opposite hand. And then in this picture, I like to have my knee up on that table there too, because kind of helps me keep my back flat and that kind of thing. But, if you've got hip pain or knee pain that limits your ability to get into that position, you can totally just leave both feet on the floor, lean down to where you're stabilizing with one hand and pulling with the opposite hand. And also, if you don't have dumbbells or kettlebells or anything like that at home, you can, just grab a duffel bag, throw some stuff in there, make it heavy and pull that, or grab a full bottle of laundry detergent, something like that. You can get creative with adding load to some of these exercises to start to really build up strength with these types of motions. On the next slide here, I've got a picture of a lat pull down, and that's, kind of an overhead variation on that pull. One of the tougher versions of something like an overhead pull would be more of a pull up, but that's a good one that I like to use with a lot of folks pulling in that overhead plane. Next, we've got a couple more exercises. On the next slide here, we've got some tees and some bicep curls. So I like those tees a lot. Just kind of starting with the hands out away from you, keeping the arms straight, pulling back into, I call it a T because with your arms, you're kind of making a big T, but you're really squeezing those shoulder blades together. And that's a really good one to work on posture with as well. But even if you don't have a band or something like that, you can totally just stick your arms out in front of you, kind of come back, squeeze those shoulder blades together as much as you can, and kind of come back to the start, and you'll probably still feel a nice little muscle burn with that one too. And then the bicep curl on the right, that's one we're all kind of familiar with. And again, that's going to help with, pulling something all the way up towards the chest. Next movement we're going to go over here is the squat. And this is one that a lot of people tend to have trouble with, before some of the upper body pushing and pulling. But this one's huge with getting in and out of a chair, getting on and off a toilet, getting in and out of a car, all those kinds of things. Anytime you're doing some of those activities, you're basically performing a squat. And so a squat is just kind of standing upright and then squatting down kind of into that pose that I'm in on the left of that slide over there. And then getting into some variations that we can use to strengthen those movements on the next slide here. I've got a lot listed. So, but yeah, the air squat is a pretty simple, easy, self-explanatory one. Just kind of standing up tall, kind of squatting down into that posture there in that top picture. If that's pretty tough, I'll use some of these different variations we're about to go into next. So the mini squat is that middle picture on the right. I really like that one for a lot of folks because you can, do this at a countertop or a table, something like that. Put your arms up on that table and put a little bit of weight in through the arms. So you're taking a little bit of weight off the legs and then just squat down as low as you can and come back up. If something like that's pretty tough, I'll start people off with a banded leg press like we've got pictured down here and the bottom two pictures, and just kind of loop a band around the foot, press out against that band and then come back up. And that can be a really good way to strengthen up the quads and the glutes and the calf, as long as that's challenging, and then progress your way into more of the mini squat, air squat kind of stuff. And some of the stuff we'll go over here on the next slide. So on the next slide here, we've got box squats are in those top two pictures. And this is one of my favorite ones to use with a lot of folks in the PT clinic as well, because, a lot of the people that I work with may have knee pain or back pain, something like that, when they squat down past a certain point. So we can use a box or a table or something like that. Just squat down as low as is comfortable and then come right back up. So that can be a good way to work on that movement and build strength through that movement while, not irritating things and giving people extra issues. The tap squat, there might be another name for that exercise, but I call it a tap squat. And I've got a picture of it down below there. And basically it's pretty similar to the box squat. I'm using that chair as kind of a marker of how low I'm going to go with that squat movement. And I'm also using the table in front of me just to help put a little more weight through the arms. You don't have to do that, but it makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, so rather than sitting all the way down to that chair, I'm slowly lowering down until I just start to feel the back of my thighs touch that chair, and then I'm coming back up. So that one's a little tougher because you actually have to control that transition from lowering down to rising back up. And that one's going to require a little bit more balance and coordination than the box squat. And then I also mentioned here the goblet squat. And I don't have a picture of it, but it's basically just holding a weight, kind of like a kettlebell, something like that here, just kind of up here at the collarbone, and then performing either a box squat or an air squat, something like that. And that's a really good way to make that exercise a little tougher and really start to build up more strength with that. Next here, we're getting into the hinge. And this is one that a lot of people might not be real familiar with. And a lot of people have also been told, don't lift with your back. So people are scared to kind of hinge forward. But this hinge is really a thing that is pretty important to be able to do as long as you're doing it right. And so what the hinge is, it's what I'm kind of depicting in those top two pictures there. So starting in an upright position and then shooting the hips back, kind of bringing the torso forward. If you notice, there's not a whole lot of movement in the back or at the knees. This type of movement is really just supposed to kind of happen at the hips. So it's that hips shooting back, torso pitching forward kind of a movement, which is going to work the low back, the glutes, and the hamstrings. So some functional examples of daily activities that require you to be able to perform this hinge are picking up an object from the ground, like I've pictured here, the bottom left picture, reaching down, getting the empty dog bowl to go put some more food in that, or making your bed. Anytime you're, kind of working over a surface like that, you're probably in that hinge position and utilizing that position. You can kind of see as I'm making the bed in that bottom right picture there, that my hips are pitched back, my torso is coming forward a little bit. as I'm kind of pulling the covers up to make the bed look nice and neat. And you're going to assume a similar posture when you're, pulling a trash bag out of a trash can, looking under the hood of your car, maybe washing dishes, sort of leaning over the sink. And that can be a common one that people kind of tell me that, their back starts to bug them when they're washing dishes, especially if there's a lot of dishes, because they're holding that position for a long time. And building up strength with this type of movement can really improve people's tolerance to those kinds of activities. So moving on here to some of the ways to train this movement. So there's a lot of different sort of variations here. And just in case there's any confusion, the way I've kind of formatted this is I've got the names of the exercises off to the left. The top exercise corresponds to the top set of pictures. The bottom exercise is the bottom set of pictures. But yeah, so you can do this with a band, kind of looping it around the feet and hinging down and then pulling up against that band like I'm doing in those top two pictures. You can take a weight or a kettlebell and hold it at your stomach and work through that hinge movement like I'm doing in the bottom set of pictures. On the next slide here, we're progressing these exercises a little bit, working into a Romanian deadlift where I'm allowing that weight to hang down towards the floor as I'm kind of working into that hinge movement. And then you can even go all the way down to the floor, like with a deadlift. If you'll notice, so there's a lot more knee movement with that deadlift, and that's okay. So with that hinge, if you're doing it right, when you get to the bottom of that hinge, like I'm doing in this Romanian deadlift in that second picture, you should feel a lot of tightness in your hamstrings. So basically what's happening there is you're kind of running out of room to do that without rounding the back, which, rounding the back's okay in general, but for the purposes of training and exercise with this kind of stuff, we really want to keep that back straight, especially as we're adding load. Yeah, so I've run out of room. That kettlebell is still about a foot off the ground, but I got to get all the way to the ground for that deadlift. So rather than rounding the back, I'm just bending at the knees to get down there. And then on the next slide, we've got a couple of my favorite ways to introduce people to this type of movement or modify this movement. One is just have them reach down to the floor and come back up. I'll use that a lot of times just to kind of assess people's coordination and mobility with this type of movement and see where we're starting from. But that can be a good thing to hit at home as long as your balance is okay and you're not going to fall forward or anything like that at the bottom of that position. Yeah, that can be a really good way just to practice having the balance, coordination, and mobility to pick something up off the floor without adding any sort of load or resistance. And then another way we'll modify that is in these couple pictures at the bottom here, deadlifting from an elevated surface. So say someone has, maybe they have some pain getting all the way down to the floor, or they don't quite use proper technique past a certain position. This can be a good way to just shorten the range of motion that we're working through while still building up a lot of strength in the back, glutes, and hamstrings, and improving their tolerance to those everyday life activities while we're probably working on kind of shortening that elevated surface as we go, working them all the way down to the ground as we can. And then we've got a couple more versions of this movement listed on the next slide here. One is we call it a suitcase deadlift, where the weight's just on one side of the body. So you're loading one half of the body more than the other side. And then the bent over row. And this is kind of a more advanced progression once technique and everything looks pretty good. And it's actually an upper body pull as well with that row movement, kind of pulling those kettlebells up towards the chest. But if you notice, I'm in that hinge position while I'm performing that pull. So you've got to be able to hold that position and be pretty stable there as you're working through that exercise. Can be a great way to build up some strength there. And then the last movement we'll get into is the carry. So we've all got to be able to carry groceries, carry a suitcase, carry a backpack, or kids, grandkids, that type of thing. So on the next slide here, I've got a bunch of pictures of different ways that we can train that. So, we've got the farmer's carry where I'm holding an equal amount of weight in both hands, and I'm just sort of walking up and down the length of the carpet. We can do a suitcase carry where I've got just a weight in one hand, the asymmetric carry where I've got different weights in each hand. And then I really like some of these variations on the sandbag carry too, because you can, adjust the weight and adjust how you're holding that to maybe simulate, carrying a grandkid or carrying a dog or something like that. And then on the next slide here, so I've got to recommend, so these are the American Heart Association recommendations for physical activity in adults. I don't want to spend too much time here. They advocate for 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity or 75 minutes of vigorous aerobic activity, or some combination of the two, as well as strength training twice a week. But what I really want to hammer here with that is on the next slide here. They also go on to say, spend less time sitting. Even light intensity activity can offset some of the risks of being sedentary. And that's huge. So it's not necessarily, get your 150 minutes of activity a week or nothing. Even just participating in some of the physical activities that you really enjoy, whether it's, gardening or swimming or walking, can have huge benefits as far as just getting the benefits associated with exercise, which can include increased quality of life, increased overall sense of well-being, decreased risk of heart disease, stroke, diabetes, that kind of stuff, and reduce your risk of disability and increase your longevity. So in general, movement is medicine. Move as much as you can within what's pretty tolerable. And then continuing on with that sort of message, they also say increase the amount of activity gradually over time. So again, if you can't really tolerate 150 minutes of activity, but maybe you can tolerate 50 minutes of activity a week, start there and work your way back up, because something's better than nothing here. And then I've got a couple links to more info if you guys want to research that a little bit on your own. But there's a link to the American Heart Association website there with a lot of that info and some good examples of what's moderate intensity exercise, what's vigorous, and then another link kind of going into a lot of detail about determining intensity. And then, so moving on to the next slide here. So where to get started? Practice these basic movements, just kind of drill technique and, coordination and mobility with those movements within what's safe and within what feels tolerable. Again, if something's feeling unsafe, that's when I would recommend, reaching out, getting some help, meet with a physical therapist or a personal trainer, someone like that, just to make sure you're doing things right and you're coming up with variations that are going to be more suitable for you. And within what feels tolerable. So with a lot of this stuff, there may be a little bit of discomfort with some of this stuff, dull, tight, achy, pulling kind of pain, especially if you haven't done this stuff in a while. And that's okay to kind of work through. But if that starts to progress to more like sharp, bad, I should really stop what I'm doing kind of pain, that's when you need to back off and either modify things or reach out and get some help. And I can say from the physical therapy side of things, my goal is to help people, just live life better and function in whatever their roles are, whatever their main activities are. So if somebody comes into me and says, I have knee pain when I get out of a chair, that's all the information that I need to justify billing your insurance for my physical therapy services. So, if you have any issues like that with any of these movements, I'd encourage you to, reach out, find a good PT to work with. And then as you go, again, progress these exercises within what's safe and within what feels pretty tolerable. Move through greater range of motion, add load and resistance as you go, and then just reach out and ask for help whenever you feel like you might need to. And then on the next slide here, I've listed a few movements that I'll start to hit once we got these 5 core movements down: step ups, floor transfers, lunges, and rotational movements. So those are still very, very important for daily life, but those are a little bit more complicated. So I'll get into those kind of after these first 5. And then, so to kind of finish up here, I think the next slide, just have my key points. All right. So again, movement is medicine. Exercise has many benefits. So I encourage you as much as you can to get up and move within what feels pretty tolerable. Training these fundamental movements can have a really dramatic impact on your ability to perform everyday activities and participate in life and do the things you enjoy. So I really encourage you to try this stuff out. Again, seek help when you need it, but this stuff is very helpful. And train within what's safe and tolerable, and seek help when you need to. So on the last slide, I've just got my contact info there. Got my email there. I know I kind of flew through that stuff. Hopefully I've kind of hammered home the point of there's a lot of different ways to train these different movements and improve your ability to perform everyday activities. But if you have any questions, shoot me an email. And if you're local to Columbia, feel free to come and see us at Ascent Total Performance. More than happy to help you out. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Casey. And Holly and I almost wore our workout gear today,
Yeah.
but we decided not to at the last minute. We were going to do some exercises at the same time as your presentation. So
that would have been a good workout.
But thank you for that. And so we're going to open it up for just a few questions. If anyone in our audience has a question, if you would just type them in the chat box, we're a little short on time, but we are going to at least try to make sure that we answer any of those audience questions. Holly?
So Casey, what if someone has never done any strength training before? Where do they kind of start?
Yeah, so where we'll start is just really, working on technique. Even if they haven't done strength training, in a gym or anything like that, they're probably doing a lot of this stuff. So I'll kind of see where they're at, see which variations of these movements they can tolerate, and just get an idea of, all right, how much load can I maybe add to this movement, whether that's dumbbells or resistance band, that kind of thing. And not totally blow them up and make them sore for days, that kind of thing. But yeah, so I'll just start at the beginning, and if they're telling me, hey, this is easy, I'll say, okay, let's make this a little harder until we get to a point where they're kind of saying, okay, this is challenging. And then take a couple of days, see how they respond to that. Next time they come in, we'll kind of catch up, and maybe we'll progress a little bit more, maybe we'll dial it back a little bit, just kind of based on that person's individual response to kind of where we started.
And how often should people be doing these exercises?
Yeah, so I would say in general, if I didn't know much about a person and they just wanted to get started with this stuff, I would say try to train each of those movements at least twice a week. But again, people are going to have different sort of experience levels with this stuff. You might have some people that are stronger than others. So some people will, go through this stuff and it's easy and they're no problems and they're not sore and they can hit it more often. But other people might be, I did 3 sets of 10 of some box squats from my couch and I was sore for 2 days. And with that person, I might say, okay, well, that's okay. Soreness is okay. It's a sign that you're getting stronger. Give yourself maybe 3-4 days in between, days that you squat. And then as you get stronger, you won't be quite as sore for quite as long, that kind of thing. And then we'll progress as we go.
And any other questions? Great.
Thank you. All right. Well, as we wrap up today's episode of the Senior Network, we would like to thank you for joining us, but also we are excited for next month's edition. It's going to be one that you do not want to miss. We are going to interview the City of Columbia's new mayor, Mr. Daniel Rickman, and the date of that webinar is going to be Thursday, March 3rd at 10:30 a.m. So if you have any specific questions for Mayor Rickman in regards to his vision for the city and how it relates to senior services, we would like you to email us at info@seniorresourcesinc.org, and we will try to incorporate some of those questions into our interview with him. The registration for that webinar that is going to be on Thursday, March 3rd is available on our website. So if you go to seniorresourcesinc.org and you go under the Senior Network tab, you will see the registration for next month's webinar. And we'll also have that on our Facebook page. And just a quick reminder, as we mentioned previously, if you've missed any of our other episodes, we do have the virtual library also on our website. And thanks again, Casey. We appreciate your expertise. And Holly, I think this concludes our webinar for today.
We had a great time. Thank you. And thanks everyone for joining us. And do not forget to register for next month's webinar. We can't wait to have Mayor recommend on here.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.